What if the price of a soldier's loyalty wasn't a flag, but a paycheck? What if victory on the battlefield wasn't about patriotism, but profit? This isn't a hypothetical scenario. It's a story of how cold, hard cash completely redefined warfare. Welcome, and today we're diving deep into the world of mercenaries, exploring how their rise shifted the very foundation of military history from conviction to contract. For centuries, the battlefield was a place of feudal obligation. Knights and soldiers pledged their allegiance to a lord or a king. Loyalty was a bond, sealed by land, titles, and a shared sense of identity. A soldier fought for his banner, his family, and his honor. But as the world changed, so did the nature of war. The old feudal systems began to crumble, and in their place, a new power emerged: money. This transition from a land-based feudal economy to a cash-based one was a game-changer. Suddenly, kings and aspiring rulers realized they didn't need to rely solely on the loyalty of their subjects. If you had enough gold, you could simply buy an army. This was the birth of the modern mercenary army, a force driven not by national pride, but by financial incentive. Think about the Italian Condottieri of the Renaissance. These were captains of fortune who commanded private armies, selling their services to the highest bidder. They were businessmen of war. Their contracts, or condotta, were detailed legal documents outlining pay, duration of service, and even bonuses for capturing enemy banners. Their loyalty wasn't to a country, it was to the contract. If a rival city-state offered a better deal, it wasn't uncommon for a condottieri to switch sides. This created a fascinating and brutal dynamic where battles were sometimes fought with a strange sense of professional courtesy, as mercenaries on both sides knew they might be allies tomorrow. This shift had profound consequences. Loyalty became a commodity. A king with a deep treasury could field a massive, experienced army overnight, regardless of his own popularity or the morale of his people. Feudal lords who couldn't afford to compete were quickly overpowered. The personal bond between a ruler and his soldiers was replaced by the transactional relationship between an employer and an employee. And this wasn't just a European phenomenon. Across history and across cultures, wherever cash economies flourished, mercenary forces followed. From the 10,000 Greeks who marched into the heart of the Persian Empire, to the Varangian Guard of the Byzantine emperors, hired soldiers have always played a pivotal role. Their motivation was clear: they fought for pay, for loot, and for the promise of a better life that their battlefield earnings could provide. The rise of cash-based contracts didn't just change who fought, it changed how wars were fought. When soldiers are motivated by paychecks, the objective isn't always a swift and decisive victory. In fact, a prolonged conflict can be far more profitable. A war that drags on means more contracts, more paydays, and more opportunities for plunder. This created a perverse incentive where mercenary commanders might deliberately avoid decisive engagements that could end the war and, consequently, their source of income. Historians have noted campaigns that seemed to stall for no apparent military reason, only to discover that the mercenary captains were milking the conflict for all it was worth. Sieges would last for months, not because the fortress was impregnable, but because a long siege guaranteed steady pay. Skirmishes replaced full-scale battles. The goal shifted from winning the war to managing the war as a long-term business venture. The very nature of military strategy was warped by the profit motive. This also meant that the power to wage war was no longer limited to established states. Anyone with enough wealth could become a player on the geopolitical stage. A wealthy merchant guild, a disgruntled nobleman, or a religious faction could hire a mercenary army to pursue their own goals, challenging the authority of kings and emperors. This decentralized warfare making conflicts more frequent, more complex, and often more brutal for the civilian populations caught in the middle. After all, a mercenary army with no ties to the land or its people had little reason to show restraint. This model of cash for conflict has never truly gone away. It has simply evolved. Today, we call them private military companies, or PMCs. They operate in a gray zone of international law, providing security, logistical support, and even direct combat services to governments and corporations around the world. The core principle remains the same: their loyalty is to their employer and the terms of their contract. The modern PMC is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Instead of Renaissance captains, we have corporate CEOs. Instead of swords and pikes, they have advanced weaponry and sophisticated intelligence-gathering tools. But the fundamental dynamic cash over convictions identical. These modern mercenaries are deployed in conflict zones across the globe, and their presence raises the same questions that were asked centuries ago. What happens when a nation outsources its security? Who are these soldiers truly loyal to? The company that signs their checks, or the country they are tasked to protect? The involvement of PMCs can prolong conflicts, just as their historical counterparts did. A stable, peaceful region has no need for private security contractors. A volatile, war-torn region, however, represents a lucrative and ongoing business opportunity. This creates a complex and often murky reality on the ground. When a private military contractor is involved in an incident, who is held accountable? The individual soldier, the corporation, the government that hired them. This lack of clear accountability is one of the most significant challenges posed by the privatization of warfare. From the feudal knight bound by an oath to the modern contractor bound by a multi-page legal document, the story of the soldier has been inextricably linked to the economic systems of their time. The introduction of cash didn't just create a new type of soldier, it created a new type of war, one where loyalty could be bought, where conflicts could become business opportunities, and where the line between soldier and entrepreneur blurred. The history of mercenaries is a stark reminder that the motivations behind war are often far more complex than simple patriotism or ideology. It shows us that when money enters the equation, it can reshape allegiances, alter strategies, and change the very meaning of victory. It's a legacy that continues to this day, shaping the battlefields of the 21st century in ways we are still struggling to understand. So what do you think? Does the rise of private military companies represent a dangerous new trend, or is it simply the modern evolution of a practice as old as war itself? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'm genuinely curious to hear your perspective on this. And as we trace this thread through history, a deeper question emerges. If loyalty can be bought, can it ever be truly trusted? When the fate of nations rests not on the conviction of its people, but on the contracts of hired guns, what does that mean for the future of conflict itself? The answer is more complicated than you might think, and it leads us into some very dark corners of modern warfare. If you found this exploration of military history fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the forces that shape our world. Thank you for watching.